Hi everybody. My name is Shafqat Mehmood. I have almost 15 years of development experience, and I have been working on mobile applications for the last 3 to 4 years. Today's presentation is about developing mobile applications using different platforms. In order to develop mobile applications, you have multiple options. So you can develop native mobile applications, and you can develop cross-platform mobile applications. So today's agenda would be to walk you through the options available for different mobile applications. What different types of mobile applications do we have? And in each category, what options do we have? So first, types of mobile applications. We have three different types of mobile applications. Basically, these are native applications, mobile web, and hybrid applications, or also called cross-platform applications. Now, native applications are basically platform-specific applications. For example, like Google, Apple, or Windows, they provide their platform-specific tools to develop these applications. These applications run in the native environment, in the native shell, and the user experience is completely different. Now, mobile web is more like running web applications in the browser. As previously, before the mobile applications, web applications were more popular, and you could use server-side technologies to build these websites. Now, with the mobile devices becoming very popular, you can also develop your web applications which can run on a desktop machine or your mobile device. Now, hybrid applications or cross-platform applications are applications which kind of are web applications, but they run in a native shell, and we'll look into the detail of each one in our next slides. So first, native applications. For native applications, we need to know a brief history about how these different operating systems came about. And in order to understand later why do we need these different platforms, we need to understand some of its history as well. Initially, as you know, mobile operating system, this Android was developed by Android Inc., and it was acquired by Google in 2005. Initially, they didn't do much with the Android, but as these devices, mobile devices, became popular, Google launched it for different devices. It's based on Linux kernel 2.6. It's open source, which means it's available for anyone to make any changes, but it's really huge. It's 12 million lines of code. Interestingly, it's the most important thing about Android is that it's open. It's based on the concept of being swappable. Swappable means if you don't like the phone dialer on your mobile application, you can just develop your own dialer and simply start using it with your other applications. Android supports a wide range of different devices. It also started supporting tablets after Android 3.0, and they named it Honeycomb. Now that was about a brief overview about Android and what you can do with Android. But in order to develop your Android mobile applications, you need to set up a certain development environment. You need to have either a MacBook or a Windows-based machine. You need to download Android SDK from Google's website. And for the development environment, you can either use Eclipse or Android Studio, and the programming language is Java. Now coming to iOS. iOS again is a mobile operating system designed specially for running on the mobile devices. It's a subset, or it was derived from Max OS X. Initially, it was released in 2007, but it was called iPhone 1, and then iPhone OS 2 later, and then in 2010 they rebranded it to iOS. The main feature of this operating system is that it is very tightly covered with the hardware, which means that, like Android can be run on many different devices, but iOS is just developed for Apple's hardware. It will just run on iPhones and iPads. So which really means you need to very little devices to worry about. You don't have so many different wide range of devices as you have in Android. You don't have to worry about so many different resolutions, so many different sizes that Android supports. So for this, you either have your iPhone, which is 4-inch and then 5-inch screens, and your iPads. But that also means there is very less flexibility. All you can do is what Apple has given you in its framework. Apps can only be developed by using it. For iOS development environment, you need to have a Mac computer. Now, iOS applications or iPhone applications cannot be developed on Windows environment. You need iOS SDK. For IDE, it's Xcode. And for programming, it's Objective-C. Now, similarly, for Windows Phone environment, again, you need to have a very different environment for its setup. Each device has its own SDK. So you need a Windows Phone SDK. For Windows mobile applications, the IDE is Visual Studio, and the programming language is C#. Now let's discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages of native applications. Now, the advantages or the pros are basically it's better user experience. The look and feel that you get on native applications is very different from applications built using cross-platform. In the hybrid applications, you don't really get that user experience. It is, if the performance, if you need high performance, then it is native applications. You also need native applications when there is a large processing data on the client side, which means on your mobile application. The disadvantage, as you have already seen, that if you have to develop a mobile application for iPhone, Android, and Windows, you need 3 different environments, people with 3 different skill sets. So that's not very cost effective. So that's why the cost of development and maintenance is high. Now, going to the cross-platform mobile applications, now native, you can develop your mobile applications using, the native code and native environments. But the problem is mobile development is hard. Different skill sets are required for different applications. And it is impossible for developers to become an expert of all. So, that's the main problem. And the solution is basically how can we leverage existing skills and develop applications that can run on all these different platforms. Some of the cross-platform solutions which are available in the market are Titanium, Xamarin, App Builder, Cordova, PhoneGap, and these platforms work on different philosophies. For example, Titanium, is owned by Accelerator. Accelerator is the company's name. Titanium is their product. You write your code in JavaScript, and then that JavaScript is compiled into native code. So anything which is developed in Titanium, that gets translated into a respective native code of iOS or Android. The problem is that it supports iOS, Android, and BlackBerry devices only. There's no support for Windows 8 yet. It might be released sometime end of Q4 2014. Xamarin is another platform. It's purely Microsoft based. You can write your code in C#. It has a little history. I mean, initially, before Xamarin, Mono was the platform, was the framework which was used on Linux environment. And as we discussed earlier, most of these operating systems like Android and iOS, they run on Linux kernel. Now, since Mono was primarily was developed to run your .NET applications on Linux environment, so initially what happened was they developed Mono Touch for iOS and Mono for Android applications to basically run C# or .NET based applications on iPhone or Android. Later, this initiative was acquired by Xamarin, another company which started working on developing this platform for iOS and Android, and now they call it Xamarin.iOS and Xamarin.Android. For Windows, this is a free version. You can develop your applications for Windows without any licenses, but for Android and iPhone or iOS, you need a license. And last of all, it's either Cordova or PhoneGap. And we'll talk more about Cordova and PhoneGap because this is really the framework that has picked up over time. Now we have talked about some of the frameworks that are available. Some are HTML based while others are not. But really what has picked up over time is all these different HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS frameworks. Now, as I said earlier, and mobile development is difficult, and it is difficult to manage. So, we need to find a way to write applications that can run on iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and BlackBerry. And the solution is Cordova. Now, Cordova is basically a JavaScript API that wraps native APIs. Now imagine running HTML applications from your phones, which runs in a certain browser. Now using that browser for all security purposes cannot access the native APIs of these devices. So Cordova is basically that framework which gives access to all those native APIs of these specific devices. And using Cordova, cross-platform native development becomes very easy. The apps are written in JavaScript. UI elements are simple HTML and CSS. The way it works is, your PhoneGap or Cordova application basically runs in a web view which is hosted natively on the device. And using Cordova or PhoneGap, basically what you can do is you can simply write applications, maintain a single code base, and start deploying it for different stores. Now many times it's little confusing that what is Cordova versus PhoneGap. So it has a little history associated with it. It was actually, PhoneGap was initially developed by Nitobi and it was acquired by Adobe later. But in 2011, Adobe donated PhoneGap to Apache Software Foundation. So the Apache open source software is called Cordova. And PhoneGap is basically the distribution of Apache Cordova. And behind the scenes, whether you are using App Builder or you're using PhoneGap, the engine that powers these different frameworks is Cordova. Now, as you can see, PhoneGap provides all these different APIs, and these are different device-specific features which can be accessed using PhoneGap. So it's mostly all of these different options. You can use camera, you can use geolocations, network, notifications, sounds, I mean, everything. And mostly it is, as you can see in this chart, these things are supported for iPhones, Android, I mean in this column, and then you can see there's full support for Windows Phone as well. Now, as you might have heard, I mean, people just don't use PhoneGap and write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and write different applications. You might have also heard that we are using SenchaTouch or we are using jQuery for our mobile development. So how do you connect all those different pieces? Now, I mean, in the simpler world, what you can do is just install PhoneGap on your machine and write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript application, and you can publish it on App Store or Play Store. But HTML and CSS, it does not give you that mobile experience. Now, in order to get that mobile experience, or what I called is appifying the user experience, you have to use these different mobile frameworks. It just gives the UI that shiny element that when a person is using a mobile application, it becomes difficult for him to differentiate whether it is a native application or a cross-platform application. So, I mean, together with PhoneGap, what you can do is you can use different UI frameworks. Now, there are literally billions of different frameworks, but the most popular ones and which have really picked up are the jQuery Mobile, SenchaTouch, Kendo UI, Bootstrap. I mean, I have just put some of it here, and based on different scenarios, people use these different frameworks. If you're using a very simple application, developing a very simple application, you can just use your jQuery Mobile. SenchaTouch is the best of them. I mean, it has a very rich library of UI controls. And once an app is developed using SenchaTouch, it really gives you that rich user experience. Now for complex applications, since you're using JavaScript, and there are so many different views that you have to support in your application. There's data access. You have to call your backend services, get data. Now, if you're not using any existing framework, things become a little difficult, and that's where these different JavaScript-based frameworks come in. And again, based on specific requirements, these different frameworks can be selected. If your application is very data intensive, where you have to get data and you have to do a lot of processing, then Backbone is better. But if it's more of just displaying data on your mobile device, then it's AngularJS is good enough. There is another framework which is picking up pretty quickly, which is Ember. We haven't mentioned it here. Now, again, as we discussed earlier, when you start developing cross-platform mobile applications, certain things become easier for you, but there are some disadvantages as well. Now, the advantage is that you can use it for different platforms. There's single code base. You don't have to worry much about the maintenance. You reduce your development cost. But the biggest disadvantages that you get with this cross-platform application is that the performance is not as good as native applications. Now, if really the performance is required, then these cross-platform applications might not be a good option. Again, I mean, if you have these different UI frameworks that we discussed about, like jQuery, SenchaTouch, which has really good, UI controls, very rich UI controls. Even then, I mean, the experience that you get with native applications, the high-end graphics and 3D support, that is really limited with these cross-platform applications. Now, let me just walk you through some of the applications that we have developed. This application was developed for a university in Saudi Arabia, and it was about looking at their map. Students. It was primarily developed for students and teachers, where they could see their schedules, news, if there are any events in the university, and the biggest part of the most challenging part of this application was to develop maps support in it. This was developed using cross-platform application PhoneGap and Sensor Touch. So accessing all those location APIs was not an issue here. In this application, we could find a route from one location to another within the university, as well as within a certain building. This was again a native application, and it had support with the camera and other things, and the email support. And the biggest, again, the most important feature of this application was integration with the email, and enabling it to run online and offline mode. And these are some of the other applications that we have developed, and we have developed applications for tablets, mobile applications for Android, iPhone, and also cross-platform applications. So thank you. That was all from my side.